The hospital elevator lurched to a stop on the 4th floor, and I steadied myself against the metal railing, my hands still trembling from the adrenaline. My brother Marcus lay in the ICU recovering from emergency surgery after his motorcycle accident, tubes and wires connecting him to machines that beeped with mechanical reassurance. I had spent the last 18 hours alternating between his bedside and the waiting room's uncomfortable plastic chairs, surviving on vending machine coffee and the kind of exhausted prayer that comes when there's nothing else left to offer. The surgeon had finally emerged 2 hours ago with cautiously optimistic news, and I had allowed myself to breathe fully for the first time since the state trooper appeared at my door yesterday morning. My phone had died somewhere around hour 12, and I had only just plugged it into the charger at the nurse's station when it exploded with notifications, the screen lighting up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. 43 missed calls. 67 text messages. My stomach dropped before my conscious mind could even process why. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The first voicemail made my knees weak. Hello, this message is for Claire Donovan. This is Rebecca from Peaceful Transitions Funeral Home, calling to confirm the arrangements for your service scheduled for this Saturday at 2 o'clock. We have the white lilies as requested, and the catering is confirmed for 75 guests. Please call us back at your earliest convenience to finalize the payment details. Again, this is regarding your funeral service this Saturday. My funeral. My service. This Saturday. The words repeated in my mind like a stuck record, each repetition stripping away another layer of reality, until I stood in that hospital corridor feeling like I was watching myself from somewhere far away. I pressed my palm against the cool wall, focusing on the sensation to ground myself back into my body. This had to be a mistake. Some horrific administrative error. Perhaps another Claire Donovan had passed away, and somehow the wires had crossed with my contact information. But even as I tried to construct this rational explanation, a cold certainty was already spreading through my chest. I knew exactly who had made these arrangements. I scrolled through the text messages with shaking fingers. Most were from neighbors and distant relatives offering condolences. So sorry for your loss. You'll be in our prayers during this difficult time. Such a tragedy and so young. Loss. Tragedy. Young. They thought I was dead. The entire town of Riverside apparently believed I had died. My mind raced backward trying to understand how this could have happened. I had left for the hospital yesterday at dawn, telling no one except my husband Nathan where I was going because everything had happened so fast. Marcus's accident, the emergency surgery, my desperate drive through the pre-dawn darkness to get to Mercy General before they wheeled him into the operating room. Nathan had kissed my forehead and promised to handle everything at home, to call my work, to let people know I would be away for a few days. To let people know. The phrase took on sinister new dimensions. I found Nathan's contact and hit dial, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. His voice, warm and familiar, invited me to leave a message. I hung up and tried again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. On the 4th attempt, the call was declined immediately. He was actively rejecting my calls. From beyond the grave, apparently. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat, but it came out as more of a sob. I steadied myself and opened my text messages to Nathan. The last message from him had arrived at 6:42 this morning. Hope Marcus is doing better. Take all the time you need. Love you. Below that, my own messages, sent throughout the night updating him on the surgery, were marked as read. He knew I was alive. He knew I was at this hospital. He knew everything. The funeral home. I needed to understand what had been arranged in my name. I dialed the number from the voicemail, and a gentle female voice answered on the second ring. Peaceful Transitions, this is Rebecca speaking. How may I help you? This is Claire Donovan, I said, my voice sounding strange and distant. You called about arrangements for my funeral. Pause, then a small gasp. Oh my goodness. Ms. Donovan? But we were told you had passed away in a car accident yesterday morning. Your husband came in personally to make all the arrangements. Car accident. Yesterday morning. The exact time I had actually been driving to the hospital. I'm very much alive, I said, each word deliberate. I'm standing in Mercy General Hospital right now, where my brother just had emergency surgery. I never had any car accident. Rebecca's shock was palpable even through the phone. I don't understand. Your husband, Nathan Donovan, came in yesterday afternoon. He was devastated. He had your driver's license, your insurance information, even your jewelry. He said you had been pronounced dead at the scene, and that he wanted to arrange everything immediately because waiting would be too painful. He cried in my office for 20 minutes. My jewelry. I looked down at my bare left hand, suddenly noticing what I had been too exhausted to register before. My wedding ring was missing. My grandmother's engagement ring that I never ever took off. I had been wearing it yesterday morning. I remembered the weight of it as I gripped the steering wheel during my frantic drive to the hospital. When had it disappeared? I mentally retraced my steps. The ICU required removing all jewelry before entering, but I had put everything in my purse. My purse that I had left at home because I had grabbed my emergency bag instead when the trooper came to my door. My purse that was sitting on the kitchen counter, where Nathan could easily access it. What else did he arrange? I asked, my voice remarkably steady considering the screaming chaos in my mind. Rebecca hesitated. Ms. Donovan, perhaps you should come in to discuss this. I'm not sure I should be sharing these details over the phone, especially given the circumstances. Please, I said. I need to know what my husband planned for my death. Another pause, then she must have heard something in my voice that convinced her. The service is scheduled for this Saturday at 2 o'clock. He selected our premium package, which includes the viewing. Friday evening, the Saturday service, burial at Riverside Memorial Gardens, and a reception afterward at the Riverside Country Club for 75 guests. He chose the mahogany casket with the cream satin interior, white lilies for the arrangements, and a catered menu featuring your supposed favorite foods. She paused. He also prepaid for everything. $28,000, charged to a credit card in your joint names. $28,000. I thought about our savings account, the one we had been building for the down payment on a house. The account I had checked last week showed a balance of $32,000. Did he happen to mention which credit card? I asked. The Visa ending in 7492, Rebecca confirmed. Our joint card, the one we use for household expenses. The one that would pull from our joint checking account. I did some quick mental math. Our checking account had about $6,000 in it as of yesterday. A $28,000 charge would overdraw it by $22,000, which would trigger a transfer from savings to cover the difference, effectively draining almost all of our combined liquid assets. Ms. Donovan, I think we need to cancel these arrangements immediately, Rebecca said, her professional composure cracking slightly. And perhaps you should contact the police. The police. The word hung in the air between us, transforming this surreal situation into something harder and more frightening. This wasn't just a mistake or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. Nathan had reported me dead, provided my identification, arranged my entire funeral, and drained our bank accounts, all while knowing I was perfectly alive and sitting in a hospital an hour away. Yes, I agreed quietly. I think I should. I thanked Rebecca and ended the call, then immediately dialed the Riverside Police Department. The dispatcher connected me to a detective named Patricia Moss, and I found myself recounting the entire bizarre situation to yet another shocked listener. Mrs. Donovan, I need you to stay exactly where you are, Detective Moss said, her voice sharp with urgency. Do not contact your husband. Do not go home. Do not tell anyone where you are. I'm sending officers to your residence right now, and I'm coming to the hospital personally to take your statement. Do you understand? The gravity in her tone finally broke through my shock, and a cold wave of fear washed over me. You think I'm in danger? I think your husband reported you dead while you were alive, stole your identification, and drained your bank accounts, Detective Moss said bluntly. I think until we understand why, you should assume the worst. Are you somewhere safe right now? I looked around the hospital corridor, suddenly seeing potential threats in every shadow. I'm at Mercy General 4th floor ICU. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Find a nurse's station and stay visible. Tell them you're waiting for police and that you may be in danger. They'll keep an eye on you. After hanging up, I approached the nurse's station where I had been charging my phone. The nurse on duty, a kind-faced woman named Pamela who had brought me coffee earlier, looked up with a smile that faded when she saw my expression. "Honey, what's wrong? Is it your brother?" "No, Marcus is stable," I said, then found myself at a loss for how to explain. "I need to wait here for the police. My husband told people I died in a car accident yesterday and arranged my funeral. I just found out." Pamela's eyes widened, and she stood up immediately. "You sit right here behind this desk," she said, pulling over a chair. "Nobody's getting to you without going through me first." The fierce protectiveness in her voice made my eyes sting with tears. Here was this stranger, offering me safety without question or hesitation, while my husband of 6 years had apparently been planning my demise. As I sat in that plastic chair behind the nurse's station,
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Watching Pamela efficiently manage her duties while simultaneously keeping one eye on me, I forced myself to think through what I knew. Nathan had reported me dead yesterday afternoon, just hours after I left for the hospital. He had gone to the funeral home with my identification and jewelry, items he could only have obtained from our home. He had arranged an elaborate funeral service and prepaid with our joint funds. He had ignored my calls today and declined them when I persisted. These were not the actions of a grieving husband who made a terrible mistake. These were the actions of someone executing a plan. But why? What did Nathan gain from my death? We had been married 6 years, together for 8. We had met at a charity fundraiser where I worked as an event coordinator, and he sold commercial real estate. He had been charming, attentive, successful. The courtship had felt like something from a romantic movie. He had proposed on a beach in Mexico, the sunset painting everything gold and pink. Our wedding had been beautiful. Our marriage had been, I thought, happy. But as I sat there replaying our recent months together, small details I had dismissed or overlooked began to arrange themselves into a different pattern. The new life insurance policy Nathan had urged me to take out 6 months ago, assuring me it was just responsible financial planning. The sudden interest in updating our wills and making sure all our accounts had beneficiary designations. His insistence that we add each other to every asset we owned, including my car that had been paid off before we married and the small investment account I had inherited from my grandfather. At the time, I had interpreted these things as evidence of his commitment to our partnership. Now I saw them as something else entirely. Preparation. Detective Moss arrived in 18 minutes, a compact woman in her 40s with short gray hair and sharp blue eyes that took in everything. She sat down across from me at a small table in a family consultation room the nurses had cleared for us, pulled out a recorder and said, "Tell me everything from the beginning." I talked for over an hour describing yesterday morning's frantic call about Marcus, my hurried departure, Nathan's goodbye kiss, and then today's horrifying discovery. Detective Moss listened without interrupting, taking notes in a small pad, her expression growing grimmer as the story unfolded. When I finished, she sat back and studied me for a long moment. "Mrs. Donovan, I'm going to be direct with you. In my 15 years as a detective, I've seen variations of this scenario exactly 3 times. In 2 of those cases, we were investigating an attempted murder. In the 3rd case, we were investigating an actual murder where the husband had laid groundwork by reporting the wife dead before he killed her, establishing an alternative timeline. The room seemed to tilt sideways. You think Nathan was planning to kill me? I think Nathan created documentation of your death before you actually died, Detective Moss said carefully. That's not something people do without serious intent. The question is whether he was planning to make the false report true, or whether he had some other motive we haven't identified yet. She leaned forward. Walk me through your marriage. Has there been any abuse? Threats? Violence? I shook my head. Never. Nathan's never even raised his voice at me. He's always been gentle, considerate. Everyone loves him. He volunteers at the youth center. He helps elderly neighbors with their yard work. He's on the board of the community foundation. Debt problems? Financial stress? Not that I know of. His real estate business does well. We live comfortably but not extravagantly. We were saving for a house. Affairs? Either of you? I hesitated, then shook my head again. Not that I'm aware of. We've been happy. Or at least I thought we were. Detective Moss made a note. Here's what I know from the officers at your residence. Your husband is not home. His car is gone, and according to neighbors, he left around 10 this morning with several suitcases. No one has seen him return. We've tried calling him and his phone goes straight to voicemail. We've issued a bolo be on the lookout for his vehicle. Nathan was gone. Had taken suitcases. Had left hours ago, around the time I would have been trying to call him after hearing the funeral home message. He ran, I said quietly, as soon as he knew I had found out. That's what it looks like, Detective Moss agreed, which suggests consciousness of guilt. People don't run when they've done nothing wrong. She closed her notebook. We're getting a warrant for your financial records, phone records, computer, everything. We're treating this as attempted fraud at minimum, with potential for more serious charges pending investigation. I'm also going to recommend you get a protective order, even though we don't have a specific threat of violence. Better safe than sorry. She paused. Is there somewhere you can stay for the next few days? Somewhere he wouldn't know to look for you? I thought about our house, the home we had shared for 4 years. My clothes in the closet, my books on the shelves, my coffee mug on the counter. All of it suddenly felt contaminated, like props in a stage play where I had been the only one who didn't know we were acting. I can stay with my brother once he's released. Or there's a women's shelter I coordinated events for last year. They take me in. The shelter might be best for tonight, Detective Moss said. I'll arrange it. We'll have officers keep watch on the hospital in case your husband tries to return here. But I want you somewhere he can't find you. She stood up. Mrs. Donovan, Claire, I want you to understand something. You did nothing wrong. Whatever your husband's plan was, whatever his reasons, none of this is your fault. You trusted your partner, which is what you're supposed to do in a marriage. He's the one who betrayed that trust. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Detective Moss handed me her card. Call me anytime, day or night. We're going to figure out what he was planning and why. And we're going to find him. After she left, I sat alone in that small consultation room, staring at my phone. The screen showed my smiling wedding photo as the background, Nathan and me on the beach where he proposed, both of us laughing at something the photographer had said. I looked at that woman in the white dress, so confident and happy and completely unaware that the man beside her was capable of planning her funeral while she was still breathing. Who was Nathan Donovan, really? Had I ever actually known him? Or had I been married to a carefully constructed illusion for 6 years? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Claire, we need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Please call me. I love you. Nathan. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the delete button. A misunderstanding. He had reported me dead, stolen my jewelry, arranged my funeral, and drained our bank accounts, and he was calling it a misunderstanding. I forwarded the message to Detective Moss, then blocked the number. Whatever Nathan wanted to say to me, he could say to the police. I had no words left for the man who had kissed me goodbye yesterday morning, and then spent the afternoon planning my burial. Pamela poked her head into the room. Honey, Detective Moss arranged for an advocate from the shelter to come get you. She'll be here in about 30 minutes. In the meantime, how about I take you to see your brother? I bet he's wondering where you've been. Marcus. I had been so consumed by my own catastrophe that I had almost forgotten why I was here. My brother, who had nearly died yesterday, who had no idea that while he was fighting for his life in surgery, his sister was being declared dead by her own husband. I followed Pamela to Marcus's room. He was awake, his dark eyes tracking me as I entered. Tubes ran from his arm and nose, and a massive bruise covered the left side of his face, but he was alive and alert. When he saw me, his eyes widened, and he tried to speak around the oxygen mask. Don't try to talk, I said, taking his hand gently. You're going to be fine. The surgery went well. You just need to rest and heal. He squeezed my hand and pointed at my face with his other hand, making a questioning gesture. I realized tears were streaming down my cheeks, tears I hadn't even known I was crying. I'm fine, I lied. Just tired and relieved you're okay. But Marcus knew me too well. He pulled the oxygen mask aside, ignoring Pamela's protest, and rasped out, "What happened?" And standing there in that hospital room, Holding my brother's hand while machines beeped out the reassuring rhythm of his heartbeat, I told him everything. About the funeral home call, about Nathan's disappearance, about Detective Moss and the shelter. Marcus listened with growing fury, his grip on my hand tightening until I had to gently remind him to be careful of his foreline. When I finished, he said in a voice rough with pain and medication and rage, "I'll kill him." "You'll do no such thing," I said firmly. "You'll focus on recovering, and you'll let the police handle Nathan." "But Claire," he was planning to. Marcus couldn't finish the sentence, the implications too horrible. "I know," I said softly. "But I'm alive, Marcus. I'm standing right here. Whatever he planned didn't work. Only because of my accident," Marcus pointed out, his mind working despite the pain medication. "If I hadn't crashed, you wouldn't have left town yesterday. You would have been wherever he expected you to be." The truth of that statement settled over us both. My brother's near death had accidentally saved my life by removing me from Nathan's reach at the critical moment. The randomness of it, the terrible luck that had become good luck, made my head spin. "Promise me you'll be careful," Marcus said. "Promise me you won't go home, won't try to handle this yourself." "I promise," I said. "Detective Moss is arranging for me to stay at the women's shelter tonight. And I'm getting a protective order tomorrow." "Good." Marcus settled back against his pillows, exhaustion winning out over his need to protect me. "Stay close, okay? I can't lose you." "You're not going to lose me," I promised. "I'm harder to kill than Nathan apparently thought." I meant it as a joke, trying to lighten the suffocating tension, but neither of us laughed. The advocate from the shelter arrived as promised, a calm woman named Diane who had kind eyes and an air of having seen everything. She drove me to a nondescript building on the edge of town, where a security code and locked doors protected the residents from the dangers they had fled. My room was small but clean, with a single bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out onto a garden slowly fading into autumn. Diane brought me donated clothes since I had nothing but what I was wearing and showed me the communal kitchen and bathroom. "You're safe here," she said simply. "No one can find you unless you tell them where you are. Rest tonight. Tomorrow will help you figure out next steps." After she left, I sat on the narrow bed and finally allowed myself to fall apart. Great heaving sobs that felt like they were tearing me in half, mourning not my death but the death of my marriage, the death of the man I thought I had known, the death of the life I thought I was building. Everything I had believed about my world had been revealed as fiction in the space of a few hours. When the tears finally stopped, I felt hollow and strange, like I had cried out everything that had made me myself, and now there was just an empty shell sitting on this bed in a room that smelled of industrial cleaner and other women's desperation. My phone buzzed again. Another text from a different unknown number. "Claire, please. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. Meet me and let me tell you the truth. Nathan." I stared at the message for a long moment, then forwarded it to Detective Moss and blocked this number too. Whatever truth Nathan claimed to have, I no longer believed he was capable of telling it. The man I had married did not exist. He had been a performance and I had been the audience, applauding at all the right moments, never seeing the machinery behind the curtain. I lay down on the narrow bed, fully clothed, and closed my eyes. Sleep seemed impossible, but exhaustion won out, and I drifted into fitful dreams where I stood at my own funeral, watching Nathan cry convincingly over an empty casket while guests who looked like people I knew but weren't quite right whispered about what a tragedy it all was. I woke to gray dawn light filtering through the thin curtains and the sound of voices in the hallway. Someone was making coffee in the communal kitchen, and I could smell breakfast cooking. Normal morning sounds in a place specifically designed to shelter people, whose normal had been destroyed. I checked my phone. 6 messages from Detective Moss, all sent in the last hour. "Call me as soon as you're awake. Important developments." My hand shook as I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Claire, we found something. Can you come down to the station this morning?" "What did you find?" I asked, my voice hoarse from crying. "Your husband's computer. We got the warrant and searched your house last night. Nathan apparently left in a hurry and didn't think to take his laptop. What we found on it, Claire, you need to see this for yourself." An officer picked me up from the shelter an hour later and drove me to the Riverside Police Department, A squat brick building I had passed 1,000 times without ever imagining I would be inside it as a victim. Detective Moss met me at the entrance and led me to a small conference room where a laptop sat on the table, its screen dark. "Before I show you this, I need to prepare you," Detective Moss said. "What we found is disturbing. It's going to be painful to see. But it's also evidence of criminal intent, which strengthens our case significantly." She sat down and opened the laptop, pulling up a folder labeled simply CL. Inside were dozens of files. Documents, spreadsheets, photos, and video files. Detective Moss opened the first document, a detailed timeline that made my blood run cold. Plan for CL transition, read the header. Below it, Nathan had outlined a step-by-step process covering the last 6 months. Convince CL to increase life insurance policy to $500,000 with Nathan as sole beneficiary. Check. Update will to ensure all assets transfer to Nathan. Check. Add Nathan to all of CL's individual accounts and properties. Check. Establish CL's routine, identify vulnerable windows. This entry had multiple subpoints listing my weekly schedule, places I went regularly, times I was typically alone. Create credible accident scenario. This section detailed several possibilities, including a car accident on the winding road to my mother's house, a fall down the stairs in our home, and something labeled bathtub option that made my stomach turn. Arrange funeral and financial transfers before incident. Check. Execute plan during Marcus's recovery, when CL distracted and emotional. And finally, a line that had been added just 2 days ago. Postponed due to Marcus's accident. Reassess timeline. I stared at that final line, the only thing that had saved my life. Nathan's perfect plan had been derailed by random chance, by Marcus's motorcycle hitting a patch of oil on a rural road at exactly the wrong moment. If my brother had made it home safely that night, I would be dead now. The timeline clearly indicated Nathan had been planning to execute his plan this week. "There's more," Detective Moss said quietly, clicking to open another file. This one was a financial spreadsheet showing Nathan's actual financial situation versus what he had told me. The real estate business I thought was thriving was actually failing. He had lost 3 major deals in the last year, and had been borrowing against future commissions to maintain our lifestyle. He owed his brokerage $70,000 in repayment for those advance commissions on deals that had fallen through. He had credit card debt I had never known about, totaling another $45,000 across 6 cards in his name only. He had taken out a personal loan using our house as collateral without telling me, currently in default to the tune of $60,000. All told, Nathan was over $170,000 in debt, all of it hidden from me behind a facade of success and stability. "The life insurance policy," I whispered, understanding flooding through me. $500,000. Enough to clear all his debts and have money left over. "Exactly," Detective Moss confirmed. "He needed you dead, Claire. It was the only way out of the financial hole he had dug for himself. Your death would have solved all his problems." She clicked to another file, and I saw emails between Nathan and someone named Veronica Chase. The emails went back 3 years, long before I had suspected Nathan of any infidelity. They weren't explicitly romantic, but the intimacy was clear in every message. Inside jokes, shared secrets, plans for a future that never included me. The most recent email, sent just last week, made everything horrifyingly clear. "Once this is over and the insurance comes through, we can finally be together like we planned. The property in Costa Rica is perfect. We'll disappear and start fresh. Just a few more days, V. Just a few more days." "Veronica Chase," Detective Moss said, pulling up another file. "She works in Nathan's office, licensed real estate agent, divorced, no kids. According to phone records, they've been in contact daily for the past 3 years. Heavy contacts, sometimes 50 or 60 texts per day. We've got a warrant out for her as well as an accomplice." I stared at the screen, at the evidence of Nathan's carefully constructed alternate life. While I had been planning what color to paint our future house's kitchen, he had been planning my death and his escape to Costa Rica with another woman. While I had been worrying about whether we were saving enough for retirement, he had been worrying about how to murder me convincingly. "There are videos," Detective Moss said reluctantly. "Recordings Nathan made of your house, showing your routines, timing your movements. He was surveilling you, Claire. In your own home. She pulled up a video file, and I watched myself moving through our living room, completely unaware I was being filmed. Making coffee in the kitchen. Reading on the couch. Taking out the trash. Mundane activities transformed into something sinister by the knowledge that the man filming them was planning how to end the life he was recording. How long? I asked, my voice breaking. How long was he recording me? Based on file dates, about 4 months. He has hours of footage. 4 months of living under surveillance in what I thought was the safety of my own home. 4 months of being studied like a lab rat, my patterns analyzed, my vulnerabilities identified. I thought about all the moments I had felt like I was being watched, dismissing it as paranoia or imagination. My instincts had been trying to warn me, and I had ignored them. We also found research, Detective Moss continued, pulling up browser history. Nathan spent considerable time on forums about life insurance payouts, reading case studies of successful and unsuccessful murder cases, researching how insurance investigators determine whether a death was accidental or intentional. He was trying to educate himself on how to commit the perfect crime. I looked at the dates of these searches. They went back almost a year. A year of planning my death. A year of smiling at me over breakfast while researching how to kill me and get away with it. Why didn't he just divorce me? I asked, the question that had been haunting me since yesterday. If he wanted to be with Veronica, if he needed money, why not just end the marriage? Detective Moss pulled up another document. This one, a consultation record from a divorce attorney Nathan had apparently visited 8 months ago. He did consider divorce. According to these notes, the attorney told him that in a divorce you would be entitled to half of all marital assets, which meant half of the debt he had hidden. You would also likely get alimony given that he was the higher earner, or so the record showed. Divorce would have bankrupted him and exposed all his lies. Your death, on the other hand, paid off all his debts and left him free to start over with Veronica. The cold calculation of it took my breath away. Nathan had run the numbers and determined that killing me was more financially advantageous than divorcing me. I had been reduced to a mathematical equation in his mind, my life assigned a numerical value and found less important than his debts and his affair. Where is he now? I asked. We don't know yet, Detective Moss admitted. His phone is off. His credit cards haven't been used since yesterday morning. We've alerted Border Patrol, airports, bus stations. We've contacted Veronica Chase's known associates. He can't hide forever, Claire. We will find him. But in that moment, sitting in that sterile conference room looking at the evidence of how thoroughly my husband had betrayed me, I wasn't sure I cared whether they found Nathan or not. The man I had loved didn't exist. The life I thought I had built was fiction. Whether Nathan spent the rest of his years in prison or on a beach in Costa Rica seemed almost irrelevant compared to the fundamental destruction of everything I had believed about my world. What happens now? I asked. Now we build the case, Detective Moss said. We've got attempted fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and depending on what else we find, potentially attempted murder charges. We present everything to the district attorney, and they decide what charges to file. In the meantime, you stay safe, you let us handle the investigation, and you start rebuilding your life. Rebuilding. The word seemed impossibly large. How did you rebuild from ground zero? How did you trust anything or anyone again when the person you trusted most had been planning your death? I thanked Detective Moss for her work and stood to leave, my legs unsteady beneath me. As I reached the door, she called out, Claire? You survived. Whatever he planned, however close he came, you survived. That's not nothing. The advocate Diane picked me up and drove me back to the shelter in silence, seeming to understand that I had no words left. Back in my small room, I lay on the narrow bed and stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything I had learned. My phone buzzed again. This time the text came from a number I didn't recognize but suspected belonged to Veronica Chase. He really loved you, you know. This wasn't personal. We just wanted to be together. Why couldn't you just let him go? The audacity of it, the stunning narcissism, sparked something hot and bright in my chest. For the first time since the funeral home called, I felt something other than shock and grief. I felt rage. I called Detective Moss and read her the message. Good, she said with satisfaction. Veronica's getting nervous, making mistakes. Forward that to me. It's evidence of consciousness of guilt and possibly harassment. After I sent the message and blocked yet another number, I opened my laptop, the personal one I had fortunately brought with me to the hospital and thus had not been left behind at the house. I needed to understand the full scope of what Nathan had done, what he had taken, what remained. I logged into our joint bank accounts and found exactly what I had feared. The checking account showed a balance of negative $16,000. The overdraft covered by an automatic transfer from savings that had drained that account to just $4,000. The credit card Nathan had used for the funeral home showed the $28,000 charge as pending, along with several other large charges from yesterday. $5,000 at a jewelry store, $3,000 at an electronics shop, $2,000 in cash advances. Nathan had gone on a spending spree with our joint funds before disappearing, grabbing everything he could carry. I documented everything with screenshots and sent the files to Detective Moss. Then I started the process of separating my life from Nathan's. I called the credit card company and reported the fraudulent charges, explaining that my husband had used the card without authorization while pretending I was dead. I called the bank and froze the joint accounts, opened a new individual account, and transferred what little remained of my own funds into it. I called our landlord, the owner of the house we rented, and explained that I would be breaking our lease due to domestic violence, and that I would not be returning to the property. I called my employer, a large event planning firm, and requested an immediate leave of absence, explaining as briefly as possible that I was dealing with a family emergency. With each call, I felt myself taking back small pieces of control. Nathan had tried to erase me, but I was still here. I was still breathing, still thinking, still capable of action. He had planned my funeral, but I was going to plan my survival. Over the next 3 days, more details emerged. Police tracked Nathan's movements through traffic cameras and witness reports. He had driven straight from our house yesterday morning to Veronica Chase's apartment, where he had loaded several large boxes into his car. From there, he had gone to 3 different banks, withdrawing maximum daily amounts from ATMs using cards I hadn't known he had. He had then driven to a parking lot near the airport where his car was found abandoned. Veronica Chase's car was gone from her apartment, along with most of her possessions. She had called in sick to work yesterday and hadn't returned. Both of them had simply vanished. They planned this, Detective Moss told me during one of our daily calls. The timing of Marcus's accident disrupted Nathan's original plan, but they had a contingency for if things went wrong. They're probably halfway to Mexico by now, planning to disappear into Central America. Will you be able to extradite them if they make it out of the country? I asked. Depends on where they end up and what charges we can prove, Detective Moss admitted. But even if they get away physically, Claire, they'll be fugitives for the rest of their lives. They'll never be able to come home, never be able to use their real names, never be able to access any legitimate financial resources. They've traded everything for the money Nathan stole and whatever they can build in hiding. That's not freedom. That's a different kind of prison. I understood what she was trying to tell me, that Nathan's escape was also his punishment. But it didn't feel like justice. Felt like he had one. He had taken our money, destroyed our life, nearly succeeded in killing me, and now he was probably on a beach somewhere with his mistress, drinking cocktails and laughing about how close he had come. The unfairness of it consumed me. On the 4th day, Detective Moss called with unexpected news. We found something else on Nathan's computer. Something that changes everything. She sounded excited in a grim sort of way. What is it? I asked, my heart rate picking up. Nathan's father, Richard Donovan. He died 6 years ago, right before you and Nathan got married, correct? Yes, heart attack. Nathan was devastated. Why? Richard Donovan had a life insurance policy worth $750,000. Nathan was the sole beneficiary. He collected that payout shortly after the funeral. I tried to understand why this mattered. Okay, but that was Nathan's inheritance. What does it have to do with now? Claire, Richard Donovan's death was ruled natural causes at the time, but the case file shows some inconsistencies that were never fully investigated. The paramedics noted some unusual symptoms, and there were questions about medications found in his system that he supposedly wasn't taking. The investigation stalled because Nathan was so grief-stricken and cooperative, and there was no obvious motive. Until now. My skin went cold. You think Nathan killed his own father for the insurance money. I think it's a hell of a coincidence that Nathan's father died suddenly just before he married you, that Nathan collected $750,000, and then 6 years later when that money was presumably gone, he was planning to collect another $500,000 by killing his wife, Detective Moss said carefully. I've reopened Richard Donovan's case. We're doing a full review. The implications cascaded through my mind like dominoes falling. If Nathan had killed his father, then I hadn't been his first victim. I had just been the next one. How many times could you kill someone you were supposed to love before it became a pattern? Before it became who you were? There's something else, Detective Moss continued. Nathan had a girlfriend before you. A woman named Jennifer Pratt. They dated for 3 years. She died in a hiking accident 2 months before Nathan met you. Fell off a cliff during a couple's hiking trip. Nathan was with her when it happened, said she got too close to the edge taking photos and slipped. It was ruled accidental. Oh God, I whispered. We're looking into that case too. And Claire, Jennifer Pratt had just inherited $100,000 from her grandmother a month before she died. Money that would have gone to Nathan as her boyfriend, except they weren't married. Maybe that's why he decided to marry you. To ensure the money would be his if something happened. I thought about Nathan's proposal on the beach, the romantic sunset, the tears in his eyes when I said yes. Had that been real, or had it been another calculation? Had he looked at me and seen a future wife, or had he seen another victim, another insurance payout, another problem solved through violence? How many people has he killed? I asked, my voice small. We don't know yet, Detective Moss said honestly. But we're going to find out. Every unexplained death in Nathan Donovan's orbit is being reviewed. Every financial gain, every convenient accident, every grief-stricken performance. We're building a profile of a serial killer, Claire. And you're the one who got away. The one who got away. It should have felt like triumph, like victory. Instead, it felt like horror. I had shared a bed with a man who killed people. I had made love to him, cooked meals for him, planned a future with him, all while being completely unaware that I was sleeping next to a monster. How had I not known? What did it say about me that I had been completely fooled? Detective Moss seemed to read my thoughts. Psychopaths are very good at what they do, Claire. That's what makes them dangerous. They don't have the normal emotional responses that would give them away. They can fake love, fake grief, fake anything that serves their purpose. You're not stupid or blind for not seeing it. You're human. You trusted your partner like you're supposed to. He's the one who weaponized that trust. But her words, though kind, didn't ease the fundamental sense of violation. Nathan had studied me, learned me, played me like an instrument for 6 years. Every genuine emotion I had felt, he had manufactured a corresponding fake one to mirror it. Every vulnerability I had shared, he had cataloged as a potential weakness to exploit. Our entire marriage had been his performance, and I had been the audience applauding while he perfected his craft of deception. Marcus was released from the hospital on day 5. I helped him settle into his apartment, both of us moving carefully around our injuries, his physical, mine psychological. You're staying here, he declared. At least until they catch that bastard. I can't impose like that, Marcus. You're recovering. You're not imposing. You're family. Besides, I'm not letting you out of my sight until Nathan Donovan is behind bars. So I moved into Marcus's spare bedroom with my handful of donated clothes and my laptop, and my growing file of police reports and legal documents. Marcus worked from home, running a web design business from his living room, which meant he was always there. A comforting presence in the background while I tried to figure out what came next. The event planning firm had granted me a leave of absence, but I knew I couldn't go back there. Too many people knew my story now. Too many pitying looks and whispered conversations would follow me. I needed a fresh start, a new beginning somewhere Nathan had never been, somewhere our memories hadn't infected every street corner. Detective Moss called on day 7 with more news. We found them. Nathan and Veronica. They're in custody in Guatemala City. Relief and something like disappointment warred in my chest. Part of me had wanted them to get away, to spend the rest of their lives looking over their shoulders, never comfortable, never safe. But the larger part of me wanted justice, wanted them to face consequences, wanted the world to see what they had done. They'll fight extradition, Detective Moss continued. But Guatemala has agreements with the U.S. for violent crimes. With the attempted fraud charges, the conspiracy charges, and now with the reopened investigation into Richard Donovan's and Jennifer Pratt's deaths, we've got enough to bring them back. It's going to take time, months probably, but they're not getting away. Good, I said, and meant it. Nathan had planned my funeral, but he wouldn't be attending his own freedom's burial. 2 weeks later, I received a package from Detective Moss. Inside was a flash drive containing copies of all the evidence gathered in the case, documentation I would need for the civil suits and insurance claims that would follow the criminal proceedings. There was also a letter, handwritten on official police department stationery. Claire, it read, I've worked hundreds of cases in my career, but yours is one that will stay with me. Not because of how close you came to dying, though that was frighteningly close, but because of how you handled it afterward. Many victims fall apart when their world is revealed as a lie. You fell apart too, which was completely appropriate, but then you got up. You took action. You protected yourself. You helped us build the case. You survived not just the attempt on your life but the destruction of everything you believed about your life. That takes extraordinary strength. Never forget that Nathan Donovan failed. He planned everything, controlled every variable he could think of, and he still failed because of random chance and your resilience. You beat him just by continuing to breathe. You'll beat him again by building a better life than he could ever imagine. Stay strong. You're going to be okay. I read the letter 3 times, then carefully filed it away with the rest of the documentation of my near death. Evidence that I had been targeted. Proof that I had survived. On day 21, I did something I had been avoiding. I went back to our house, or rather the house Nathan and I had rented together, escorted by Marcus and 2 police officers. The locks had been changed by the landlord, and the property had been cleared after the police finished their investigation. I was there to collect my belongings, the pieces of my life that were still mine. Walking through those rooms felt like touring a museum exhibit of someone else's life. The couch where we had watched movies, the dining table where we had hosted dinners, the bed where we had slept together, all of it looked like props now. Set dressing for Nathan's long performance. I gathered my clothes, my books, my grandmother's china, my photographs. Marcus helped me box everything up, carefully not commenting on how little I took. Most of what we had owned together I left behind. I didn't want the furniture Nathan had chosen, the appliances he had used, the decorations he had arranged. They were all tainted by association, transformed from household goods into evidence of how thoroughly I had been deceived. In the bedroom, I found my purse where I had left it on the kitchen counter 3 weeks ago. Inside, my grandmother's engagement ring still rested in a small pocket where I had tucked it for safekeeping. Nathan had stolen my wedding ring to give to the funeral home as proof of my identity, but somehow he had missed this one. I slipped it onto my right hand, reclaiming it as my own rather than a symbol of marriage. My grandmother had worn this ring through 60 years of marriage to my grandfather, through wars and depressions and all the challenges of a long partnership. She had been happy, genuinely happy, with a man who loved her honestly. That kind of love existed. I had seen it in my grandparents, in my parents before my father died, in friends' marriages. Nathan's betrayal didn't mean real love was impossible. It just meant I had been catastrophically wrong about where I would find it. As we finished loading the last boxes into Marcus's car, my phone rang with an unknown international number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Claire Donovan? A man's voice, accented and formal. This is Martin Castellanos. I'm the attorney representing Nathan Donovan in Guatemala City. My client wishes to speak with you. I have nothing to say to Nathan, I said immediately. Please, Mrs. Donovan. Just a few minutes. He says it's important. He says you deserve the truth. I should have hung up. I should have blocked the number and driven away. But some self-destructive part of me needed to hear what Nathan would say now that his plan had failed and his future had collapsed. 2 minutes, I said. That's all he gets. There was a pause, some shuffling sounds, then Nathan's voice, and hearing it felt like a punch to the stomach. Claire. God, Claire, I'm so sorry. I never wanted, I didn't mean for, I don't know what to say. How about the truth? I said, my voice cold. How about you tell me when you decided to kill me? Was it always the plan? Or did I do something specific to make you think I deserved to die? It wasn't like that. Nathan said desperately. I didn't actually want you dead. I just wanted a way out. The debts were crushing me, Claire. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And the insurance money, it was just an idea at first, just a thought. I never seriously considered it. You planned my funeral while I was alive, Nathan. You researched how to kill me and get away with it. You filmed me in our home. You tried to time my death for when I would be emotional and distracted. That's not an idle thought. That's intent. I know how it looks, Nathan said, his voice breaking. I know what the evidence shows. But Claire, I swear to you, I don't think I could have actually gone through with it. When the moment came, when it was time to do it, I think I would have backed out. I think I would have found another way. Your father, I said quietly. Jennifer Pratt. How many other times did you back out, Nathan? Silence. Long enough that I thought he had hung up. Then in a voice so soft I almost couldn't hear it. I'm sick, Claire. I know that now. Something's wrong with me. Normal people don't think like this. Normal people don't plan these things. I need help. Psychiatric help. If I go to trial, my lawyers are going to argue diminished capacity, mental illness, personality disorder. They think they can prove I wasn't in control of my actions. Were you? I asked. Were you mentally ill when you filmed me in our kitchen? When you researched life insurance payouts? When you bought my funeral flowers? Or were you just a selfish coward who wanted money and a new life and decided I was expendable? I don't know, Nathan whispered. I genuinely don't know, Claire. When I look back at what I did, it's like watching a stranger. I can't reconcile that person with who I think I am. But I did those things. I know I did. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring back your father, I said. Sorry doesn't bring back Jennifer. Sorry doesn't give me back the 6 years I spent married to a man who never existed. Sorry is just another lie, Nathan, and I don't believe anything you say anymore. What do you want from me? He asked, sounding broken. Nothing, I said simply. I don't want anything from you. I just want you gone from my life. Completely gone. Whatever happens to you in the legal system, whatever prison or psychiatric facility you end up in, I want no contact. No letters, no calls, no messages through third parties. You tried to erase me, Nathan. Consider it done. I'm erasing you. I hung up before he could respond and blocked the number. Marcus, who had been standing nearby and could hear both sides of the conversation through the phone speaker, pulled me into a careful hug. Proud of you, he said quietly. That took guts. It took nothing, I replied. He gets nothing more from me. Not my fear, not my grief, not my anger. Nothing. We drove away from that house, and I watched it disappear in the side mirror, getting smaller and smaller until it was just another building on just another street. Somewhere someone else would eventually live, unaware of the darkness that had once occupied those rooms. Somewhere that had nothing to do with me anymore. The legal proceedings stretched across months. Nathan and Veronica were extradited and formally charged with multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and in Nathan's case, 3 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming. The computer files, the financial records, the reopened investigations that revealed patterns of unexplained deaths and convenient inheritances throughout Nathan's adult life. The trial, when it finally came, was brief. Nathan's attorneys did indeed argue diminished capacity, presenting psychiatric evaluations claiming he suffered from antisocial personality disorder and was not fully responsible for his actions. The prosecution countered with evidence of careful planning, showing that Nathan knew his actions were wrong and had taken elaborate steps to conceal them. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and found Nathan Donovan guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. Veronica Chase, as an accessory, received 25 years. I attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the gallery surrounded by the families of Nathan's other victims. Jennifer Pratt's mother, Richard Donovan's sister, representatives from each life Nathan had destroyed. We were united by grief and betrayal, by the shattering understanding that we had all been fooled by the same monster. When the judge read the sentence, Nathan turned to look at me. Our eyes met across the courtroom, and I saw in his face not the man I had married but a stranger. There was no recognition there, no connection, no shared history. Just emptiness. I looked away first, not out of fear or pain, but because he simply wasn't worth my attention anymore. Outside the courthouse, a small group of reporters waited, hoping for comments from the victims' families. I walked past them without stopping, Marcus at my side, until one called out, "Mrs. Donovan, how does it feel knowing your husband planned your funeral while you were still alive?" I stopped, considering whether to answer. Then I turned back and looked directly into the camera. "My husband didn't plan my funeral," I said clearly. "Nathan Donovan, a man I thought I knew but never really did, made arrangements he hoped would be needed. But they weren't. I'm alive. I survived. And every day I continue to live is proof that his plan failed. That's how it feels." That clip played on the evening news and spread across social media. Survivors of domestic violence and attempted murder reached out, thanking me for speaking up, sharing their own stories of escape and survival. I became unintentionally a face of resilience, a symbol of the woman who refused to die on schedule. 3 months after Nathan's sentencing, I did something I had been planning since the day I found out about his arrest. I changed my name. Claire Donovan became Claire Morgan, taking back my mother's maiden name and shedding the last connection to Nathan. It was surprisingly easy, just paperwork and fees and a judge's signature. Legal alchemy that transformed me from one person into another. With my new name came a new beginning. I moved to Portland, Oregon, a city where no one knew my story, where I could walk down the street without seeing places Nathan and I had been together. I found a small apartment in a neighborhood full of coffee shops and bookstores, the kind of bohemian area I had always wanted to live in but Nathan had dismissed as impractical. I started a new job with a nonprofit that coordinated resources for domestic violence survivors, using my event planning skills to organize fundraisers and awareness campaigns. Working with other survivors, hearing their stories, I learned that my experience, while extreme, was part of a larger pattern of intimate partner violence that took countless forms. Some survived physical abuse, some emotional abuse, some financial control. Some, like me, survived partners who had actively planned their deaths. We were all members of a club none of us had wanted to join, bonded by our mutual determination to rebuild our lives from the wreckage of trust betrayed. Marcus visited often, making the drive from Riverside on weekends to check on me and ensure I was eating properly and not spending all my time alone. He brought news from home, carefully filtered to exclude anything about Nathan or the trial's aftermath. Our relationship, which had always been close, deepened into something more profound. My brother, who had nearly died and accidentally saved my life, became my anchor. The person who proved that real love, unconditional and honest, actually existed. On the anniversary of the day the funeral home had called to confirm my service, I did something symbolic. I went to a florist and bought white lilies, the same flowers Nathan had chosen for my funeral. I took them to the waterfront and one by one, threw them into the Willamette River, watching the current carry them away. Each lily represented something I was releasing: grief, anger, the person I had been when I was married to Nathan, the innocence I had lost, the future I had planned. I threw it all into the river and watched it float away until I couldn't see it anymore. When the last lily had disappeared, I stood on that riverbank and felt something shift inside me. Not healing exactly, because the scars Nathan had left would never fully disappear, but acceptance. Understanding that what had happened to me was not my fault, that surviving was its own victory, that I could build a life worth living despite everything that had been destroyed. My phone rang as I walked home. Detective Moss, who had become something like a friend in the months since Nathan's arrest. "Claire, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just tossing funeral flowers into the river," I said, and heard her laugh. "Sounds appropriately cathartic. Listen, I called because I wanted to let you know. Nathan filed his appeal. It's not unexpected, but I wanted you to hear it from me first rather than seeing it in the news." An appeal. Of course he would appeal. Men like Nathan never accepted responsibility, never admitted defeat. They always believed they could talk their way out, charm their way free, find some loophole or technicality to exploit. "It won't succeed," Detective Moss continued. "The evidence is ironclad, the trial was conducted properly, and his sentence is consistent with the crimes. But the process will take time, maybe years. I wanted you to be prepared." "I am prepared," I said, and realized it was true. Nathan already took 6 years of my life. He doesn't get any more. Whether his appeal succeeds or fails, whether he spends the rest of his life in prison or somehow finds a way out, I'm done. He's done. This chapter is closed. Good, Detective Moss said approvingly. That's exactly the right attitude. You've got a whole life ahead of you, Claire. Don't spend it looking backward at someone who isn't worth the energy. After we hung up, I continued my walk home, watching Portland's evening light paint the buildings in shades of gold and amber. Somewhere Nathan sat in a prison cell, beginning his life sentence. Somewhere Veronica Chase counted down the years until her release. Somewhere the families of Jennifer Pratt and Richard Donovan mourned their loved ones and tried to find meaning in senseless deaths. And somewhere, walking through a city that felt like home despite its newness, Claire Morgan took another step forward into a future that belonged entirely to her. The story of the woman whose husband planned her funeral while she was still alive became my past, a thing that had happened to me but no longer defined me. I was not Nathan Donovan's victim. I was not the wife who didn't see. I was not the woman who almost died. I was Claire Morgan, survivor, advocate, friend, sister, someone who had looked at death in the form of white lilies and a mahogany casket and said no. Not today. Not ever. And every morning I woke up breathing was proof that I had won. 3 years after Nathan's arrest, I received a letter from his prison. Not from Nathan, who I had blocked from all contact, but from his therapist. Dear Ms. Morgan, it read, I am writing to inform you that Nathan Donovan has been diagnosed with terminal cancer. He has approximately 6 months to live. He has expressed a desire to apologize to you in person before his death. I am not advocating for or against such a meeting, merely conveying his request. If you choose not to respond, I completely understand and will inform Mr. Donovan that his request has been denied. I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away without response. Nathan was dying. The universe was doing what I had been unable to do, removing him from the world permanently. Some people would call it justice. Some would call it karma. I called it irrelevant. Whether Nathan died in 6 months or 60 years made no difference to my life. I had already said my goodbye, already severed that connection. He would die alone as he deserved, without my forgiveness or my presence or any acknowledgement that he had ever mattered. 6 months later, an obituary appeared in the Riverside newspaper. Nathan Donovan, age 41, died in state prison while serving a life sentence for multiple murders. He was survived by no one. No wife, no children, no parents or siblings. No one claimed his body, so he was buried in the prison cemetery in an unmarked grave. The man who had planned an elaborate funeral for me ended up with nothing, not even flowers. I read his obituary and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, no closure. Just the same emptiness I had felt looking at him in the courtroom. He had been erased from my life long before his physical death, and his actual dying changed nothing. But that evening I lit a candle. Not for Nathan, but for Jennifer Pratt and Richard Donovan and all the other victims whose names I didn't know. People who had trusted and loved and been destroyed for it. The flame flickered in my darkened living room, a small light against the darkness that men like Nathan represented. And when it burned down to nothing, I blew it out and went to bed, ready for another day of living the life Nathan had tried to steal. 5 years after the funeral home called to confirm my arrangements, I met someone. His name was Daniel and he was nothing like Nathan. Where Nathan had been charming and confident, Daniel was quiet and thoughtful. Where Nathan had moved fast, sweeping me into romance before I could think, Daniel moved slowly, building friendship first, letting trust develop naturally over months. Where Nathan had made grand gestures, Daniel offered small kindnesses, remembering my coffee order and bringing me books he thought I might like and asking questions that showed he actually listened to my answers. I need you to know something, I told him after we had been dating for 6 months. I was married before. To a man who tried to kill me. Who planned my funeral while I was still alive. It's a long story and a terrible one, and I need you to decide if that's something you can handle before we go any further. Daniel listened to the entire story without interrupting, his face growing more horrified as the details accumulated. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment, then said, "That's the most terrible thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry that happened to you. Thank you for trusting me enough to tell me." "So you're okay with it?" I asked. You're okay with the fact that I have this history, this baggage? Claire, he said gently, that's not baggage. That's proof that you're strong enough to survive anything. Why would I not be okay with that? We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside Portland. Marcus walked me down the aisle. Detective Moss attended as a guest. No white lilies, no elaborate production. Just two people who had found each other despite everything promising a future together. At the reception, Marcus stood up to give a toast. To my sister, he said, raising his glass, who refused to die on schedule, who rebuilt her life from ashes, who showed me and everyone else that surviving is only the beginning, that living, really living, is the victory. To Claire, who is the strongest person I know. To Claire, the guests echoed, and I felt the weight of that name, the name I had chosen for myself, the identity I had built from nothing after everything was destroyed. Claire Morgan. Survivor. Advocate. Wife. Sister. Friend. A woman who had been targeted for death and had chosen life instead, over and over again, every single day. Later, as Daniel and I danced to our first song as husband and wife, I thought about Nathan. Not with anger or grief, but with something like pity. He had thrown away everything, destroyed everyone he touched, and died alone in a prison cell. He had planned my funeral down to the flowers, but in the end, his plan had failed. I was still here, still breathing, still building a life worth living. And every heartbeat, every breath, every moment of joy or contentment or simple peace was proof that he had lost and I had won. The story of how my husband tried to kill me became just a story. Something that had happened once but no longer defined my present or dictated my future. People still sometimes recognized me from the news coverage, still whispered when I passed. But increasingly I was known for other things. The nonprofit I directed. The book I wrote about surviving intimate partner violence. The advocacy work that connected me with survivors around the country. Nathan Donovan had tried to make me disappear. But instead I had become more visible, more solid, more real than ever before. This morning, I received a call from a young woman named Sarah. She had seen my TED Talk about surviving and she needed help. Her boyfriend had been acting strange, taking out life insurance policies, making comments about her value. Small things that added up to a terrible pattern. I think he's planning something, she whispered into the phone. I think he wants me dead. But I have no proof, nothing concrete. Everyone thinks I'm paranoid. What do I do? And I told her. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Get out now, don't wait for proof, don't give him the chance. Contact the police. Change your routines. Protect yourself. All the things I wish someone had told me before I ended up at a funeral home confirming my own service. You're going to be okay, I told her. You're already okay because you recognize the danger and you're taking action. That's the hardest part. Now you just keep going. You survive. You build a new life. And someday, you'll help someone else the way I'm helping you. After we hung up, I sat in my office surrounded by photographs. Me and Daniel on our honeymoon. Me and Marcus at his wedding last year. Me and Detective Moss at a conference on violent crime prevention. Me speaking at events, me laughing with friends, me simply existing in a world Nathan had tried to remove me from. They planned my funeral down to the flowers. But I'm still here and I always will be. The weeks after Nathan's sentencing blurred into a fog of sleepless nights and legal paperwork. I moved through Marcus's apartment like a ghost, jumping at sudden noises and checking locks obsessively. The nightmares came every night, vivid dreams where I stood at my own funeral watching Nathan cry over an empty casket while guests whispered about what a tragedy it all was. Detective Moss connected me with Dr. Susan Chan, a trauma therapist who didn't flinch when I described discovering my husband had planned my death. She taught me breathing exercises for panic attacks and helped me understand that my hypervigilance wasn't paranoia, but a normal response to profound betrayal. During one session, she asked what I missed most about my old life. I expected to say something about my home or routines. Instead, I said trust. Nathan had stolen my ability to take people at face value, to believe what they told me. Marcus left ridiculous sticky notes around his apartment. You are not dead despite Nathan's best efforts. This houseplant has no ulterior motives. The absurdity made me laugh for the first time since everything exploded, a real laugh that felt like reclaiming something Nathan had tried to take. My brother understood I needed reminders that not everything was sinister, that sometimes kindness was simply kindness without hidden calculation. The insurance company initially refused the payout, suggesting I must have known about Nathan's plans. Their lawyers implied no one could be that oblivious to their spouse's intentions. My attorney Patricia Reeves dismantled their arguments with the surveillance footage showing me completely unaware I was being filmed in my own home. The company eventually settled, and I put most of the money into a trust funding domestic violence programs. Spring brought a job offer from Second Sunrise, a nonprofit helping domestic violence survivors rebuild their lives. The work felt meaningful in ways my previous career never had. I would use my event planning skills to directly help people in situations like mine, creating something positive from the worst experience of my life. My first fundraising gala raised twice what the previous year had brought in, and survivors spoke on stage about their escapes while I listened from the wings, recognizing pieces of my own story in theirs. I started writing essays about my experience first privately, then for online publications. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of women shared their own stories of close calls and narrow escapes, forming a community in the comments. A literary agent approached me about expanding the essays into a book. The advance was modest, but the opportunity to help someone recognize danger before it reached the funeral planning stage felt crucial. Writing forced me to examine the shame and anger I had been avoiding. Dr. Chan helped me separate reasonable responsibility from misplaced guilt. I was not responsible for Nathan's choices or lies. I was only responsible for my own healing and what I chose to do with the knowledge I now had. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.